Thank you, Nili, and thank you, Barin, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to meet you, and more particularly to meet my distinguished brothers, General Saib and Dawar Saib. Uh, let me give you a historical context, and then I will come to a bit more details, but I might try to be quick and brief. When I was serving Afghan government, I served as chief of staff to president, and we started a system that we divided key countries among us. That somebody was looking after one or two countries as his or her portfolio. And it happened incidentally that I was looking after Pakistan's portfolio with a couple of other countries. Now, as part of my portfolio, I had to dig into the background of our relationship and how it evolved, with the intention that how to find better ways to ensure peaceful coexistence and have a reasonably good level of trust. In my search, I came across an assessment that was carried out in 1950s. And the team that carried out, I don't remember the names, but I only remember the name of the leader of the team, whose surname was Siddiqui. I have no idea who he was. My two distinguished friends may have heard his name. Now, in his report, he considered Afghanistan as the enemy of internal cohesion of Pakistan. So as long as there was a stable Afghanistan, because at that time it was monarchy and Afghanistan was the most stable country in the region. In his report, he referred to Afghanistan as a threat to the internal cohesion of Pakistan. And therefore, the policy was arranged as such to prevent that Afghanistan's influence. So at that time, there was no reference of considering Afghanistan as strategic debt to Pakistan. It was the other way around. And then it happened in 1980s. That point was proven when Soviet Union came to Afghanistan, as General Saib alluded to. Then millions and millions of Afghans migrated to Pakistan, crossed over the Durand line to Pakistan, and used it as their backup stronghold. And started fighting from there against the Soviet Union. So, yes, I agree now with General Durrani that Afghanistan used Pakistan as its strategic debt in 1980s. But towards the end of that decade, when the Soviet Union withdrew and collapsed, then a new thinking emerged in Pakistan. They didn't know how to describe that new situation and how to arrange Pakistan's policy. Right at that moment, President Ziaul lost his life. I wouldn't go to the details of it, but his successor in the army was General Mirza Aslam Beg. He was known for issuing miscalculated statements. And he said Afghanistan was Pakistan's strategic debt. Then analysts added that he means if India invade Pakistan, then Pakistan could retreat to Afghanistan and use Afghanistan as a backup stronghold like Pakistan did. Then when Pakistan became nuclear 10 years later, that statement totally became useless for Pakistan because Pakistan said, well, we are now nuclear. If India cross over to Pakistan 100 meters, then we will use their weapon. So we don't need a backup stronghold. But for Afghanistan's policy, they needed to find another definition, how to look into Afghanistan. And in my opinion and in my analysis, they came up with a definition of strategic bridging. And by strategic bridging, I mean that at that time, the US lost interest in the region. They packed up and left. Soviet Union was gone. China was nowhere. It was not a strong country. Pakistan was considering itself as as a strong mini superpower, not superpower, mini superpower, and having eyes on Central Asia, on Central Asian resources, and on Central Asia to have influence there. Now, Afghanistan was a bridge to Central Asia, and therefore they launched the Afghan Mujahideen that they had trained and they had nurtured, and they expected Afghan Mujahideen to take Pakistan's influence to Central Asia. But that failed, incidentally failed, because there was no counter strategy. There was no other country to counter the Pakistan strategy. Incidentally, it failed because the Afghan Mujahideen started fighting with each other. And then that fight provided an opportunity to India and Iran to come into the scene and supported Pakistan's opposition. Now, Pakistan was standing behind Gulbuddin Hikmatyar fully, but he failed to deliver. And then Pakistan needed another card to replace Gulbuddin Hikmatyar. An offshoot of the Mujahideen parties emerged, that was Taliban. And then Taliban was supposed to deliver Pakistan's influence into Central Asia and serve as the bridge to communicate with Central Asia and to have access to Central Asian resources, whatever. Then came 20 years gap in all of this because after 9/11, that was accident, and the US came, disrupted everybody's plan. So was Pakistan's plan disrupted. 20 years later, Pakistan definitely helped Taliban to come to power, hoping that they will recapture from where they had left in 2001, and then helped directly or indirectly Taliban to take over Kabul. But once Taliban to take over Kabul, again, the whole thinking changed because Taliban thought that they were the superior. They were holding superior ideology and they were holding superior army and superior motive. And they thought considering Pakistan as the extension of their ideology, as extension of their motive. And I started hearing the slogans like the whole aim is Ghazwa Hind. That was the slogan, that was the narrative among the Taliban, Afghan Taliban in 2001, 2002. Now, who was located on the way to Ghazwa Hind? That was Pakistan. And then who were their troops to provide that opportunity? That was TTP. So, go back to 1950s. In 1950s, Pakistan thought that Kabul was influencing Pashtun and Baloch to disintegrate Pakistan. Now, Pakistan is blaming TTA for using TTP to disintegrate Pakistan. I'm not saying that it's baseless. There's always a reason for one making the statement, but that's the reality. So, what happened then? Pakistan felt threatened by TTP, and obviously the situation I look at, it's very similar the Pakistan situation to Afghanistan situation of 2018, 2019. At that time, we were getting a list of daily casualties, about dozen of soldiers, about a dozen of police, and then many of the civilians. Exactly the same is happening now in Pakistan. So it's a matter of concern. It's a matter that to think about it. But there is a truth in that the table is turned around. Afghanistan is no longer, I mean, Taliban's Afghanistan is no longer the strategic depth or strategic bridge for Pakistan. It's actually subject to influence by Taliban through TTP. To what aim? We have to wait. I was a bit surprised with the welcome India gave to the Afghan Taliban foreign minister, because yes. I know 4 years down the line, India would be complaining exactly the same. That and they would,
we're going to get into that topic about India. The visit to India, but I also just want to ask you: is it possible for Afghanistan and Pakistan are their national interests so different? Is it possible to have a sort of win-win situation?
It's possible. We had reached very close to that situation in 2018, actually, 18-19. We even agreed on a common framework, which we called it APAPS, Afghanistan-Pakistan Plan of Action for Peace and Solidarity. And there were 5 areas of cooperation. Mechanism was defined. Afghanistan and Pakistan, for the first time in history, establish a joint military commission. So, but then what happened in Doha surprised all of us. Taliban emerged as victorious, and Taliban and Pakistan thought that that discussion with Kabul within the APAPs was then no longer useful because their best friend reached to the power center. And they thought, well, what we expect is the Taliban are going to deliver. We don't need the Afghan Republic anymore. So then the Republic collapsed and Taliban emerged. But yes, as ex-Afghan ambassador, as special envoy, as somebody looking after Pakistan's portfolio for 20 years, yes, I know there was possibility to build the level of trust that was required between the two of us. And then I'm not talking about the fences of the Durand line. We were thinking of the opposite, because back in 70s and 60s, anybody from going from Jalalabad towards Peshawar, or from Peshawar towards Jalalabad, there were no need for visa, no need for passport. Some of them had an ID card, and they will show at the cross point and then cross over. So I think that's the solution that we need between Peshawar and Jalalabad, between Kandahar and Quetta, that people are free to go towards each other, to trade, and that's not impossible to achieve. If France can achieve that with Germany, and Germany with many other countries, they had much better wars. Why can't we achieve it between Afghanistan and Pakistan? But I think some opportunities were lost. I'm sure they will come back, but not to my generation. They will come back to the next generation.